Hello, Om Shanti, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, I think I can be heard. So good evening. Welcome to our Saturday Insightful Dialogue series, in which we will explore the special festival of Raksha Bandhan. I say special because it signifies the power of pure love. We also have a very special person with us today, Kristina Kashyap, who is a meditation teacher, a writer, holistic health coach, and Raj Yoga practitioner. In fact, I have one of her books right here. It's called Fed Up to Wonderstruck, if you can see that. This is a truly inspiring book which encourages you to take those steps forward on a vibrant yet practical path forward. It is such an enjoyable, easy read, and I, for one, couldn't put the book down. She has been studying and sharing the benefits of this ancient Raj Yoga practice for 17 years, including in this easy read. I can personally attest to the fact that she teaches how to create balanced and nurturing relationships with all aspects of the self. It's hard to feel anything but serenity in her presence, and I can't think of a more appropriate speaker to connect the dots for us today of our love for God with healing, empowerment, and upliftment. It's so good to see you, Sister Kristina, again, and I now hand it over to you. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Harini. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. That was so sweet. And Harini is a very beautiful soul. And thank you for hosting this today for the LA Center. I can't really see that many videos here, but maybe if you could unmute and speak, if this applies to you. How many of you are just coming to know about Raksha Bandhan for the first time? Is there anybody here who has never heard about Raksha Bandhan or hasn't been to a program on Raksha Bandhan? And
I heard about, but I haven't seen before how is it and why do it, but I heard the name, this Raksha Bandhan.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anybody else who similarly, this is their first introduction to Raksha Bandhan?
Yes, this is my first time. I've been taking the Raja Yoga course these days, last month. I just finished the introduction course, and then I'm taking the advanced one with Elizabeth. She's here today, yeah. So yeah, but this is my first time joining the event.
Okay, wonderful. So glad you came. This is and the celebration of Raksha Bandhan really never gets old. It's something that we look forward to every year, just like someone looks forward to Christmas or their own special holidays, because it's significant in terms of how we experience this bond of love with God, and it's a celebration of that. So just going back to, before we go into the Brahma Kumaris understanding and the way that we celebrate this holiday in a very spiritual way, let's talk about what it is, how it started out, and how it is celebrated in India. So Raksha Bandhan translated, so Raksha means protection, and Bandhan means a bond. So it's a bond of protection. And this is typically celebrated in India between a brother and a sister. And if you think about the relationship between a brother and a sister, this relationship is supposed to be, one of those relationships that you can always rely on, right? You grew up with this other soul, and you have this very pure love, and you have this feeling for your brother or sister of protection. You want the very best for them, you want to protect them. So there's just this pure unconditional love between a brother and a sister. And that is also how we translate that in the Brahma Kumaris, but it's in this sense of our pure unconditional bond with God. And so we'll get more into that in a minute. But back to how in India it's celebrated is that the sister every year on Raksha Bandhan, which is on a full moon night, right? Because all of the holidays in India, they celebrate them around the full moon because of the energy of the full moon, the newness of that cycle. So Raksha Bandhan is celebrated according to the moon, and the sister will tie a bracelet. Sometimes it has like an amulet or a gemstone or some symbol on it, but it's basically a bracelet that she ties on her brother. And this bracelet signifies their bond. And when she ties her brother, she is sending in that bracelet these good wishes for his protection, that he would have this long life, that they could have a beautiful brotherly, sisterly relationship for all the years of their lives. So there is an acknowledgement of the power of good wishes, the power of the mind in this ceremony, as the sister has these good wishes as she ties her brother. And then the brother in turn gives her a gift, thanking her for those good wishes in a sense. But he also, it's sort of this subtle promise the brother makes to the sister that as long as I live, I will protect you, my sister. As long as I'm there, you don't have to worry. And so that is, in a sense, this bond of protection. The sister is sending these beautiful, powerful good wishes. And the brother is saying, I'm always here for you. I'm always here to protect you. And you can imagine that in India, over the centuries and decades, this was really important because the women in the culture didn't have a whole lot of say in things. The father was their protector in a sense until they got married, and then the husband was the supporter and the carer. But who was the one who would speak up for the sister if something wasn't right? For example, in the household they were married into, or anything for that matter. So this was the way. The brother is the one, in a sense, in the society that had the rights, more rights than the women. The men had the rights. So this was the brother's way of saying, you're my family. And as the one with more capacity in this world, I will protect you. I will protect your honor. So it really was important. And like anything in life, anyone in this world that is in a position of power really has a responsibility to protect those who are not in that kind of power. And for vegetarians, for example, it's, we realize that we have the power in this situation with animals, and we therefore have the responsibility to care for them because we have the power to do so and they don't. So similarly in this, this Raksha Bandhan celebration, the brother used to say, look, I'm the one in this society with more power. I will protect you, my sister. And so as we go into the Brahma Kumaris way of understanding Raksha Bandhan, it is in connection with the most pure, unconditional, profound relationship that the soul ever has, and that is with God. And in a sense, if you think in that analogy, that of all the souls in the universe, God is the soul that sits in the highest position of power. And what is powerful? What do we consider to be powerful in our lives? And for the Brahma Kumaris, we think of, peace is powerful. If you can remain peaceful, that's a power. Knowledge is powerful. And the more knowledge you have, the more power you have. So these are powers, and God is constantly the embodiment of peace, the embodiment of knowledge, the embodiment of love, of all of those qualities 100% of the time. God is constant in those qualities. And that is why in this relationship with God, God, in a sense, is in that relationship, that position where God can offer us a protection, because God is stable, constantly stable in those beautiful divine qualities. And it is us as the soul, as the children, who are remembering, who are trying to become stable in that again all the time. So it's this relationship with God where, and interestingly enough, if you think about the purest relationship, if there's really a pure consciousness between the brother and the sister, the brother would feel, oh, this sister of mine is equal to me. She is, even though we're of different gender, but we are both worthy. And he would have that kind of a consciousness. And in the same way, God has that kind of a consciousness for the soul. God doesn't sit there and think, oh, I'm way more powerful than these souls. But God has that vision on the soul, that the soul is also capable of being in that powerful place of knowledge, of truth, of love, of peace all the time. The difference is that we're not there all the time. And so it's really through this relationship that we start to get closer and closer to that more of the time. And so I want us to think about, what is it in a relationship that makes us feel really secure? What is it in a relationship that makes us feel really seen and really heard? Can you share some things that make you feel secure in a relationship and protected in a relationship?
Trust.
When there's trust, yes, absolutely. And what are some of the things that create that trust?
When the person's not judging you.
That's a really big one. Absolutely.
I miss you.
Hmm?
I miss you. Did you move to Florida?
We did, yes.
Oh, I miss you. Okay. Okay.
Yes. It's nice to be with all of you here in this way, virtual way. So yes, it is what are the things that create, the ability to not be judgmental in a relationship, right? When we're fully accepted, right, then we feel unjudged. When someone really accepts us, when someone appreciates us, sees the beauty in us, and they appreciate that, and they're seeing our goodness as opposed to pointing out our flaws, right? So all of these things are actually qualities connected to love, right? And so a relationship that's loving, like the purest love, would have all of these things in it. We'd be able to fully trust because we're not being judged, we're being accepted. There is this absolute feeling like, I can just be embraced in the lap of this person. I can completely let my guard down and I will be safe and secure. And so we do experience these very secure, trusting, loving relationships with people. But we can experience this all the time with God, where there isn't a fluctuation in that. And it doesn't mean to say that sometimes we don't feel less connected to God or a little disconnected at times, because every relationship sometimes needs more attention or needs to be inspired, to sort of rediscover the other person in a sense. But whenever we really connect in with God's energy, with God's light, it is always there to support us. It is always this very safe, pure and secure place. And when you meditate sometimes and you experience God, I mean, my experience, sometimes you can feel like almost like a hand on your head or a hand in your hand. There's like this sense of like, I'm with you. I'm with you and I support you unconditionally. And so when you have this feeling in a relationship of security, of being seen, of being heard, it creates this immense amount of trust, and you feel also protected. And, you know, God's sort of promise to us is that he will always be there for us to rise up to our highest well-being, to our highest point of enlightenment, if you would like. God wants to see us uplifted into our highest state of consciousness. And that is really the power of God's love, is it seeks to guide us back to our truest self. It wants to see us in our happiest, freest place. And so in the Brahma Kumaris, when we tie this every year, normally, like in the center, wherever you live, we have a Raksha Bandhan ceremony. And one of the instruments will tie the Rakhi onto your arm while remembering God, while both of you are remembering that pure, loving relationship with God. And you receive the Rakhi on your wrist. And this Rakhi is a symbol of God's protection over the soul. This unconditional love and care for each one of us, that God is always there. And usually we like to make a promise back, just like in the way the brother and sister tie the Rakhi, and they both, you know, offer something in a sense for the other person's protection. But in this case, both of those protections are for us, because God doesn't need anything. God is one of those, the only soul that will never need anything from us in a relationship, because God is in that fullness, full energetically, full of virtues, full of powers. So both of the things we receive in the Rakhi ceremony are for us. So this bracelet we receive is a symbol of God's protection over the soul, that God is with us, God is looking out for us. And also we make an internal promise to ourselves and share that with God, that this is my next step in evolution. This is what I'm going to work on for my own protection. So we usually like to make a promise, you know, to ourselves of some kind as we do the ceremony, like, you know, oh, I'm going to be, someone brought this up so we can use this, I'm going to be less judgmental this year. I'm going to work on accepting and appreciating everyone where they're at. And that's going to be my spiritual effort. So now, by making this promise at the time of this ceremony, it's like our intent for the year, our spiritual intent. We're basically taking God as our accountability partner. We're saying, look, you know, this is my gift, in a sense, my gift to my spirituality, my role within how, you know, how best I can affect the world in a positive way. My commitment is this. I'm going to consciously work on changing this. And then the Rakhi is a symbol of that. We have God's support. Whenever we're making spiritual effort on ourselves, whenever we're aiming for that totally awake, divine, free consciousness that we originally started with, full of all virtues, God's protection is over the soul. And we channel that often into one specific promise, because it makes it easier to really work on that. But we're basically saying, okay, I'm taking you in a partnership with me, God, to transform this part of myself. And you're going to be my accountability partner in this. And as I make this change on myself, that in itself is a protection, right? So we have the double protection, the protection of God being there for the soul and its spiritual growth and its journey to uplift and show us the way in that when we need guidance. But also it's a protection because by making this spiritual effort or making this spiritual change, we are protecting ourselves in so many ways, right? Karmically, we're creating more good elevated karma. So that's an energetic protection. That when we change something inside, it changes, it vibrates, right? It affects our thoughts, feelings, relationships, our actions. And then that creates more and more positive karma for us. So this opportunity during Rocky, we take this time to say, okay, what is something I would really like to work on this year? And what is something I would like to take God's help as my accountability partner to work on this, to have that full support, to be able to check in and say, this is how I'm doing with this, and be guided further in that. So let's take a moment right now in silence and think about something. Let's focus our attention on what is either a virtue that you feel you need more of and you're lacking. Like maybe you want to work on being more flexible or more patient, and you realize how by doing that it would improve the quality of your relationship with yourself and with others. And so it could be that, or it could be something else that you feel if you work on that this year, it will elevate your spiritual alignment, awareness, your consciousness. So let's just take a moment and think of something that we would like to bring our attention to. Now feel as you have this thought, as you make this conscious intention, feel how you feel just thinking about it. Does it feel good to acknowledge that this is an area that you would like to improve? Maybe it's a relief just bringing it to your awareness and acknowledging it. And now feel, what does it feel like when you communicate about this to God? And when you take God as your partner in changing this thing, as your guide. As your support. And just see if you feel lighter, if you feel maybe more energy to do that thing, to make that shift. And so let's come back to each other in this space. And why don't we challenge ourselves in this upcoming year ahead to consciously make this effort and also consciously bring God's help into that? Because very often at Raksha Bandhan time, we try to make a shift in something that's typically been hard for us to shift. That's why it's still remaining there. And we haven't been able to completely get rid of it yet. So it's something that's not easy to change. And maybe the missing piece is that we've tried to change it on our own versus taking that unlimited help versus surrendering it. And so if we don't take this all on our own head as only our responsibility, but we say, God, you guide me in this process, how to shift this thing that I need to change inside. And maybe you will see the difference of taking the partnership with God, taking God as your accountability partner in that, and not trying to change it alone. Because if we could have just shifted it, we would have done it before, right? So maybe we don't quite see where we need to make a tweak or exactly what's holding us back. And that's where, God and the space God is in and the unlimited truth, God can guide us. God can show us that way. God can help us to see those little areas. Like in our meditation, we might get a touching, we might get a very clear insight into what's going on. And then we say, oh, okay, now I see why I was doing that. So this bond of love, this bond of protection with God is all about, it doesn't have to be just this one day, and we don't have to have a bracelet. We don't have to put the bracelet. The bracelet is a reminder. The bracelet is a reminder of that promise we made to ourselves. It's of that effort, that it's a reminder that we're not alone in our change, that we're supported by the Supreme Soul in our shifting. And so the bracelet is a reminder, just like we sometimes wear other things or pieces of jewelry as reminders of things so that we remember. But the main thing is in this Raksha Bandhan is learning that this is a partnership and that our own personal transformation and upliftment, our own healing, is something that we have a support in. We have this support in the universe, the support of God. And that as long as we want, as long as we seek and ask for that guidance, we can be shown, as we go into silence, these different ways that we can shift what it is that we're trying to shift to get closer and closer to our peace, to our power, to our truth. And so for me, over the years, when I started out studying Raj Yoga, at that time, I didn't even believe in God. I didn't know if God existed. I was unsure. And the way that I started to create a relationship with God was through communicating. And I think any good relationship, the foundations of any good relationship, the first thing is communication, sharing your feelings, sharing what's going on with you, and not holding back also, my first communications to God were, I don't know if you exist. And I'd like to find out, but I'm not sure either way. So one of the ways we can take God in this divine partnership and our transformation and this bond of protection and love is to communicate with God regularly, to feel this heart-to-heart connection, and knowing that we're the children of God, that we are important to God, just like God is important for the soul, souls are important to God. So we're a spiritual family. And after communication, I think, and this goes very closely with communication, but all good relationships have honesty in them, very transparent, right? If you want to build a good relationship, there has to be that transparency. And when that is there, like you can see clearly what's in my heart and I see clearly what's in yours, there's a closeness that forms. So when we communicate, it's, for me at least, it's always been that the more honest and more I communicated with God exactly what was happening in me, the closer I felt to God, the more experiences I received of that connection. And the more assurance, because in the beginning, like I said, I didn't know if God existed. So I personally needed a lot of assurance. I needed a lot of experiences to feel that connection. But all of that came through just this honest, open-hearted communication, right? So once we have that communication, we have that honesty, then I think the next thing that is in the relationship, we can feel it very palpable, is the care, is the regard, is that, you feel seen, you feel heard, all those things that encompass love, all those things. So maybe we feel, or some people feel, they haven't ever experienced the love of God, or they haven't experienced that relationship in a real way. Maybe they feel like it's just a concept to them, but that's where the first the first aspects of having a relationship of love is to communicate and be honest. And then you start to see that you start to experience all of these other aspects of love in that relationship. And all of those are really a part of this bond of protection, this bond of love, right? And so in any relationship where we create that honest, open communication, it starts to bring us closer, and we feel more and more loved. We feel more and more appreciative of that relationship. So the takeaway is really, the more that I create this relationship, I can realize that I can take God's help and guidance in my personal transformation. And that is sort of the Raksha Bandhan all the time, is that as I create this relationship becomes a protection for me. It becomes something that can heal me, uplift me. It can be beneficial for my mind, my body, my heart, my energy, everything. Everything becomes benefited through this relationship with God, this relationship of love. So I'd like to pause here for a few minutes and see if anybody would like to share anything of their own experience of this, or has any questions about this holiday. Anybody have an experience of Rakhi, of making this, any other Rakhi that you've ever had, making a promise, and you noticed that shift that happened that year as you surrendered this and you took God's help in that? I think somebody's unmuted. Or you can also, anything else you want to share on this topic? Nobody wants to share? Does
I want to
anybody?
share.
Okay,
Okay, sorry.
no
Yeah,
problem.
because I just started Raja Yoga study. One point you just mentioned, I can hear you, because I didn't believe the existence of God either. So when I first got into Raja Yoga, and because I did different types of meditation before, but I never did such meditation connecting with God. So I never experienced that. And when I took the course, the introduction of Raja Yoga course, and I was trying to meditate this way, connecting with God, communicating with God, and talking to Him. Just like I read like the first part of the Murli just last week. Like they just introduced them, and I kind of felt light during my daily life, because when I met some people, or maybe they're rude to me, or maybe they're not nice to me, before I got into Raja Yoga, I was like, oh, why did they do this to me? Or like, oh, I will feel very bad the whole day. So when I know who we are just a soul. And whatever we're experiencing during our life, it's just like we are playing a role on the stage. Just if it passed, we just let it go and just let the life keep going. I'm learning how to detach from those negativities, like those ups and downs happening in the life. So this is what even though I just got into this for a month, I totally got a benefit from it. I was, I don't know, I just felt lighter and happier each day. Whatever happened in my life, I mean, during the daily life, I mean, yeah, I kind of look at things different way now. But I can't say I totally mastered this. I'm still practicing it because it's a lifelong practice. But I really benefit from it. That's what I experienced.
Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing. I feel like you're describing, probably many of us when we started Raja Yoga. And it's basically Raksha Bandhan, what you're talking about. It's as you start to connect consciously in that relationship, which we are doing in meditation, connecting with God, with the divine, you start to experience this immense amount of protection and power. And that becomes visible. You can see that in a solid way because you start to notice, like you said, you're happier, you're lighter, you can let things go more easily. You develop, again, the virtues and powers in the soul start to grow back to what they once were, in a sense. And it's that connecting with God's pure energy and light that provides us those powers and virtues in that it's a noticeable difference, right? Like from 1 month ago to now, you can see the difference as you connect in with God's energy and how it changes your day-to-day interactions, how it affects the way that you think, the way that you feel. And so these are kind of the rock solid experiences we have of ourself transforming before our very own eyes. And that is that because of that support we're receiving, that energetic plug-in that we're doing, that's uplifting us, elevating us back up to that very powerful spiritual place. And in a way, this is definitely more important than having visions or anything like that. When you see that proof in yourself of yourself changing at such a deep level, that really shows what connecting in with God, with love in this relationship, how it changes the soul. And it takes us back to that original divine state. And that's really the protection, that's what's happening in this energetic exchange with you and God, is it's lifting us back up. It's raising us back up, almost like a pulley. We connect in, it's kind of like we're being pulled back up, and we suddenly find we're more patient, we're more unconditional, all of these things because we're connecting with God, and God is of that highest original purest vibration, and it's pulling us back into that vibration. And that is a protection in that relationship and connecting in that relationship. It's a magical experience. Enjoy this time.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Yes. Anybody else would like to share anything? All right.
Yeah, I'd like to share.
Yes, please.
Your discussion today was really beautiful. Thank you so much. Probably one of the strongest takeaways that I'm going to keep in mind moving forward is about, the powering of remembering where we come from. And you said that we really fall into grace through the power of surrender because there's so much power in the choice of letting go. Because I feel like, suffering is due to attachment, attachment to expectations, judgments, our worldview. The thing, negative emotions are born from things not being the way we'd like them to be. And when you break attachment and you're connected to nothing, that's almost where you find out that you're really connected to everything, because you remember where you came from. Your perspective, your worldview opens up, that I'm connected to God. I have this internal bond. I mean, I just need to walk outside and explore nature to realize all of the abundance and beauty and the magnificence of the world, and everything, many things operating in harmony, and remembering where I come from, and expressing that in a truly dignified way is just really something that life is really like about. It's why I think it's spirituality and connecting to God and becoming like an instrument of God is like truly just, it's it's like walking a path and finding greater truths about ourselves and the world outside of us, and doing it while maintaining virtuosity in the things discussed in Raj Yoga, like you love, purity, trust, wisdom, knowledge.
That's a really beautiful point. What I'm taking away from what you're saying, Christy, is that when we're connecting in with this energy of God, it takes us into this vast relationship of just the magic and connectedness, the divinity of life, and sometimes when we don't feel that connection, or we lose touch with connecting with the divine, with God, our scope and sort of our vision can get really small, and it can go on to the problems, just focusing on the problems and survival. But once we're connecting in and we feel supported and we feel connected in that relationship, it just opens our horizon. It just takes it all the way out. And we start to see and feel the magic and power and beauty and everything. It's really like a switch flips,
Yeah, I feel like it's like evolving stage of consciousness, where now you realize that there's cosmic consciousness and collective consciousness and all of these other beautiful, wonderful things that are a part of the, mystery of God and the universe. It's like a series of awakening. I think that's why some traditions too talk about spiritual fulfillment being, seeking enlightenment on a certain path. And enlightenment is living in tune with, what's celebrated about God.
Right. It's like remembering. We talk a lot in Raj Yoga, right, about remembering. It's basically remembering who we are. It's that simple. It's like, oh, we're this eternal, spiritual, divine being. And I have this eternal, beautiful relationship with God and with everything. And it's like, it feels so good to realize that, because it's like we're going back to who we always were. We're freeing ourselves from all the limited things we were thinking we were, which is never who we were, but it was constricting us from this experience of how really divine everything is. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really a magical journey. And I know that Sylvia was saying earlier, she also, entered this not knowing if God was there. And I entered this in the same way. And now nobody could change my mind that God is there. I mean, I know God is there. And I'll know that, until I leave this body, because now I've had so many experiences. And I think that it's such a pure and freeing and supportive relationship. And something that we should always feel is that in this relationship, we're fully supported. We can share anything. And the more that we actually share in this relationship, the closer we'll actually be, and be able to feel that connection, feel that protection and support. Would anybody else like to share anything before we meditate together? Okay, so let us do a nice meditation together where we take ourselves into our own Raksha Bandhan experience with God. Collectively together we'll do it, but an internal process, where we can sort of tie this bracelet, this remembrance of this relationship, this remembrance of how supportive this relationship is of our own transformation. And so we'll have a subtle Raksha Bandhan experience. So everybody sit comfortably if you're not already. And take some nice deep breaths into your belly. If for any reason you can't hear at any point, please just type it in the chat box. Feel your body settling in, sinking in towards the chair. Feel this chair supporting you. Chair, the floor, wherever you're sitting. Feel completely relaxed and yet alert. As you allow yourself to be supported. And now bring your awareness to the center of the forehead. With a bit more consciousness. For you, the eternal soul, sitting inside this body. And you, this eternal soul, you have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Soul. With the highest divine energy in the universe, with God. And just like any parent wants the best for their child, this parent wants the best for you always. The Supreme Parent, the Supreme Mother, the Supreme Father wants to see you in your most free and joyful state. This is the pure, unconditional good wishes. Your supportive love that exists between God and you. This is the highest, sweetest, most unconditional love in the universe. That one sees you. That one acknowledges, values, appreciates, respects the real you. So that one that is free from selfish desires. Most pure one who is there to give to us and not to take. This relationship with God is 100% protective, 100% there to support me. It is 100% pure, pure love. And this love comes with so much care for my well-being, so much compassion. It is never judgmental. So whenever I surrender something to that one, whenever I ask for guidance and how to release something, how to free myself, that one is there as my constant companion. That one is there with unconditional support. Let's take a moment and remember that thing that we were thinking about, that we wanted to transform this year. What is that thing that you would like to take God as your accountability partner, your guide, your cheerleader? Think of that thing. Now imagine you giving that to God. telling God you need God's help with this, that you want to walk hand in hand with God's hand on your head. As you bring this subtle change, this important change. And as you let go of that thing and hand it to God, imagine a bracelet is tied onto your wrist. This bracelet is the reminder of this bond, this eternal bond of love and protection. This bracelet is sparkling. It's shining like crystals giving off a rainbow color. It's full of energy. It's a reminder that you are supported to be your brightest, most beautiful self. That is what God wants. To see you in your highest, happiest, healthiest place. And that by taking God's help in this transformation, you will be both guided and protected. That you don't have to do this alone. Because the most holy, the most loving, the most wise being in the universe cares about you tremendously. And let's make a promise to ourselves to communicate honestly about what we're surrendering. To constantly bring God into the equation of this change so that we can be supported, so that we can be shown the secrets of how to change it or heal it. And see, what does it feel like in your being right now to know that you're not alone and you don't have to make these changes alone. God's energy and God's love It supports our health and our happiness in all areas. It uplifts us, elevates us. And we simply have to make some time and space to connect. It's so simple. And the law in the universe is that whatever we put effort into, that effort can never go to waste. Whatever we put energy towards, the energy builds. So if I put energy towards this beautiful relationship, this partnership with God, then the love in this relationship will become a fact. It will become tried and true. I will be able to trust it completely. I will feel this Raksha Bandhan. Om Shanti. So I just want to mention that in 20 minutes or so, Los Angeles will start their 1-hour bhakti meditation, which they're doing every night. So you're welcome to stay on. I think Harini will just play some music in the meantime if you want a longer meditation.
Thank you so much, Kristina. That was beautiful. And yes, we'll just transition into our daily evening meditation. Thank you all for joining us. This session has been recorded and will be put on our LA Brahma Kumari's YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Thank you again, and Om Shanti.
Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Going to miss you when the center opens. And your husband, I miss you. You're so wonderful.
Thank you, sis. What you see is what you are.
Thank you, Christine. Nice to see you.
Om Shanti, sister.